Right now on Spotlight, we are delighted to welcome Orsolya Peterfy with her vast educational background in English, theology, Scottish literature, and history as well. She has delivered a fresh perspective on Shakespeare in her book, The Two Versions of King Lear. This thought-provoking piece, inspired by the political unrest in Hungary back in 2006, challenges conventional interpretations and proposes new concepts such as early modern absurd and early modern deconstruction. We are delighted to have this author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Prime 7 Media for helping us put her in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support writers like her by subscribing to our channel. Orsolya, thank you so much for being our guest today on Spotlight.
It's a delight for me. Thank you.
Oh, the delight is for me as well. This is quite a book you have written rather, and taking on Shakespeare is no easy task, especially when you're giving new interpretations on an ancient work. Tell us a little bit about how it came to be.
Well, actually, this is my second book on Shakespeare, because my first one was written on the Four Great Tragedy. I say tragedy, not tragedies, because the term was first used by A.C. Bradley, the famous Shakespeare scholar, in 1904. So the Four Great Tragedy, I used to investigate. Mm-hmm. And basically, it was already in 2006 when I interpreted those tragedies as absurd ones. And I coined the term element of deconstruction. Should I tell the story, how it came to my mind?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I haven't talked about this, actually. I found it very personal and I did not dare to tell it to anyone. But in the massive unrest of the of Hungary, when in 2006 it was a left-hand side party on the top with the Prime Minister Gyurcsány Ferenc, or Ferenc Gyurcsány. Masses were going out on the streets and rebelling against his regime. He tried to build a so-called post-communist state, a state of violence and terror, and it was horrible, actually. The freedom is something that we lacked, absolutely. I was not a Hungarian citizen either, because I'm from Transylvania and I was not given the opportunity to get my citizenship. It was very, very difficult to get it. But I went on the streets because I believe in human rights, in the inborn values, in freedom, and so on. I was standing there at the Blacklist Square and later on at the Keleti Pályaudvar. So that is the railway station. It's a huge road. Basically, it's called a Rákóczi. It doesn't matter. Many police officers on horseback were coming towards us with swords, with vipers, and so on. Actually, I was standing alone because most of the people went away. Sorry, it's my little son, and I don't want him to be published. Right. So actually, I was there. I was deciding. I decided that I either stop these police officers or I will die for freedom. And as a matter of fact, neither did I stop them, but in the penultimate moment, someone rescued me, pulled me away, free, and it was my brother. And he rescued me that night again, when under the arcades, a policeman came and jumped over my head with his horse, and only 5 centimeters away from my head was the horseshoe. Still, I can say it was something so much uplifting in those experiences. You must imagine that when walking on the streets with those people who did believe in the democratic rights, we were laughing at each other, we were smiling at each other. We all knew why we are there, what we want to do, and why we don't accept this regime anymore. And it was very uplifting, but still, it was kind of declension, the political context, the political sphere was deconstructing the individual, deconstructing his values, deconstructing the self, without the hope of Derridean reconstruction. So by Derrida, there should be a reconstruction after deconstruction, but we did not have this hope. And I just imagine that this situation is very similar to the world of Macbeth. So the fourth of the four great tragedy, the world of Macbeth, where the greediness, the willingness to attain power was so strong that it resulted in crimes. Here, people were not killed, but shot with plastic bullets. Many were severely injured, beaten, and so on. So basically, it was really a dark age. Those few years, while that prime minister was on the top, was very dark. And still, he can be at power, and his wife is a politician still. So basically, and she talks about the European future now for us and for our children. So it's how ironic, I would say. So the basic idea came at that time. I wrote my first book on the absurdity of Shakespearean drama, the metamorphosis of depicting Shakespearean characters. I published it in Hungarian, but I did get controversial criticism. So it was not, I wasn't sure if I'm right or wrong. So I decided to write another book, this time only on King Lear, and to delineate the subject again. What more, in the third chapter, I give an ample analysis basically on these terms that were coined by me. And I do hope that there are people who find it interesting, who enjoy reading it.
Yeah, absolutely. Part of the book talks about the early modern deconstruction. Tell us a little bit about your approach to early modern deconstruction presented in your book.
Okay, basically, if we consider under the character of Lear, the way he deconstructs his country, so divides his country, divides his nation, divides his values, he does not realize, but he deconstructs himself. I would quote, I just prepared with a small quotation, if we still have time.
Sure.
From the third chapter, the preliminaries, because you can see 3 points, what are the most important pillars of this chapter. As the last chapter, this will focus on the absurd and marginalized elements that may fit into the frame construed by Jankot, yet will not be tossed totally into the abyss of the absurd. Hereby, the figure of the king and that of father will be analyzed along all those elements that deconstruct the self in order to reconstruct it on a higher level. As for textual reference, the Art and Complete Folio Text 2011 will be used. The first subpoint, the relationship between deconstruction and the absurd, on the line of the identity crisis, in which I tried to prove that the deconstruction of the character brings to the surface the absurd that connects the classical character as a guideline, the whole identity with the disintegrated identity. Second subpoint, identity search, the broken identity. In this section, to explore Lear's absurd identity, diffuse identity is examined at the plot level and identity diffusion at the text level, while it is demonstrated that Lear's moral blindness is recognized within the process of downsizing and deconstructing deconstruction. I justify his identity crisis by examining the relationship between nature and identity. I used here the book of Jan Kut, Shakespeare, contemporary Marjorie Garber, King Lear chapter. I am fond of Marjorie Garber. She's an extremely great professor. Third subsection, the place of the absurd and the throne of identity, by which I want to confirm the fact that the absurdity of the basic situation, which contradicts domination because it pronounces division rather than unity of the country and unification of the nation, places the absurd on the throne of identity. My primary source are Jan Kut's Shakespeare Contemporary. Stanley Cavell's Disowning Knowledge in Sixth Place of Shakespeare. And I also quote from Martin Astley. I rather use 20s and contemporary literary critics, so their works, to make it much consumable and maybe more interesting.
Absolutely. Well, it's easy to see why your book has captured the imagination and minds of a lot of people. It's available now even in the Harvard bookstore. It must really feel good to have that kind of reach, that kind of impact for people who might not really know about the political context of Hungary.
It's incredible. And I want to thank to those people who put my book in the Harvard bookstore because a dream came true. I can tell you that I come from an acting family, and we were so poor in my childhood that I could never have dreamed of studying abroad, not to mention studying at the Harvard. I didn't even scrutinize scholarships, but the dream university for me always was the Harvard. And I always wanted to get some information about these students from there. And I knew a professor who was teaching there, who was tutoring there. So it's a huge appreciation for me that my book was selected. So thank you.
Right. Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, congratulations. It's easy to see why it was selected to be in the Harvard University bookstore, because it is a truly unique take on a classic work. The name of the book is Two Versions of King Lear. It is an insightful read. It was informed by the uprising and the strife in Hungary, and Ursula has done a wonderful job in bringing it to life in her pages. Anything else you wanted to let the viewers know before we leave you today?
Well, at this time, I can say that when I was 18 years old, I wanted to become an actress. I did to finish the New York Film Academy film acting course in 2007 in Hungary, and I felt a really big, how to put it? So I felt depressed after not being successful, not being kind of given the opportunity to act in great American movies. But at this point of my life, I feel that I chose a better career, because as a teacher and writing books and scrutinizing Shakespeare already for 15 or 16 years, I can say that it's an excellent experience to have such an interview and to have my book read by a few people already, and maybe some more people will buy it. So thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Great having you today. Great speaking with you today. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time, this time until next time on Spotlight.
Thank you, Mr.